Welcome to this explainer. I want you to literally just look at your hand right now. Whatever shade it is, whether you're pale enough to be mistaken for printer paper or dark enough to absorb sunlight like a solar panel, that color didn't come from some cosmic roll of the dice. Instead of looking at this as just a physical trait, we're going to treat human evolution as a totally cold, calculating optimization algorithm, and we're starting with the mind-bending reality of our biological origins. So why did ancient humans go from black to white? Let's dive right into this, because the answer is honestly absolutely wild. It actually involves this incredible slow-motion biological negotiation between your ancient ancestors and an incredibly indifferent star sitting 93 million miles away that was definitely not playing fair. If you trace our human family tree all the way back to Homo sapiens' arrival in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago, every single one of your ancestors had dark skin. There were absolutely no light-skinned people anywhere on Earth. The entire species was dark-skinned, which means light skin is a surprisingly recent evolutionary invention.
Let's move to Section 1, the original biological shield.
Now, to really get why this changed, we kind of have to stop treating skin like it's just, the bag your body came in. It's actually your body's most massive organ, and it's pulling off like 47 different jobs all at exactly the same time. Melanin is the natural pigment giving skin its color, and in the most literal biological sense, it functions as a built-in, always-on UV filter and sunscreen. Under the blazing equatorial sun, evolution selected hard and fast for this pigment to act as an impenetrable shield. It wasn't just a look, it was a total necessity to block relentless invisible UV radiation. So melanin effectively acted as this multi-purpose superweapon against the dual threat of the African sun. First off, it protected your DNA, keeping you alive long enough to actually reproduce by blocking deadly skin cancers like melanoma. But second, and this is absolutely crucial, it protected pregnant women. See, UV light actively destroys folate in the bloodstream. By blocking those rays, melanin preserved the exact folate levels needed to protect growing embryos from catastrophic neural tube defects and miscarriages. But okay, everything completely flipped with the Great Migration. Between 70,000 and 100,000 years ago, a really slow generational drift started pushing humans out of Africa. And by 40,000 years ago, dark-skinned humans had populated northern Europe and Asia. They entered this totally different environment where the sun hit the Earth at a much lower angle. The days were way shorter, and that UV radiation was significantly weaker. Which brings us to Section 2, the vitamin D crisis. This shift in geography created a totally brutal evolutionary trade-off. Human skin is kind of like a solar panel, right? It desperately needs UVB rays to manufacture vitamin D. But with highly efficient melanin blocking what little weak radiation there was up in the north, the skin just failed to synthesize this essential molecule. And the cascade from that was deadly. Without vitamin D, calcium absorption in the gut dropped dramatically. Children developed severe bone-deforming rickets, and adult women suffered from softening pelvic bones, which made childbirth extraordinarily dangerous and very often fatal. Multiple bodily systems literally just collapsed. So, in a pre-industrial world without, vitamin supplements or fortified foods, natural selection kicked in like a merciless calculator and essentially reversed its inputs. In the low-light north, dark skin wasn't just a disadvantage anymore, it was a generational death sentence. Random genetic mutations for lighter, more UV-absorbent skin started appearing, and instead of being eliminated, they spread like wildfire, simply because synthesizing even just a little more vitamin D kept people alive. Moving right along to Section 3, the agriculture accelerator. For the longest time, scientists just assumed this depigmentation happened super slowly, over hundreds of thousands of years. But, plot twist, it absolutely didn't. Ancient DNA from early European hunter-gatherers, like the famous 10,000-year-old Cheddar Man found in Britain, proves that even after living in the completely overcast north for tens of millennia, humans had not dramatically depigmented yet. This guy still had dark to medium dark skin, dark curly hair, and blue eyes. So why the sudden change later on? Well, it all comes down to a massive dietary vitamin D collapse triggered by the Neolithic Revolution. See, hunter-gatherers were actually eating a very high vitamin D diet packed with fatty fish like salmon, liver, kidney, and shellfish. They got their vitamins from their food. But early farmers switched to a severely low vitamin D diet that consisted almost entirely of cereals, things like wheat, barley, and oats. Suddenly, these dense farming populations were forced to rely almost entirely on whatever extremely limited vitamin D their skin could synthesize from the weak northern sun. Because of this dietary collapse, the evolutionary selection pressure intensified dramatically. Combined with how fast mutations spread in highly connected, dense farming villages, the extremely fair skin we see in places like northwestern Europe today is shockingly recent. It only spread widely in the last 6,000 to 8,000 years. To put that into perspective, that is less than the last 3% of human history. So if you happen to have pale skin today, this surprisingly recent dietary collapse is literally the biological reason why. And that leads us to our final section, Section 4, a UV calibration system. When you strip away all the societal baggage humans have tacked onto this, the sheer biology of race and skin color is absolutely fascinating. The evolutionary pressure to synthesize vitamin D was so incredibly intense that East Asians and Europeans independently evolved lighter skin using entirely different genetic pathways. This is a perfect example of convergent evolution. Natural selection found the exact same adaptive answer to low UV survival multiple times, completely from scratch through completely different molecular routes. How cool is that? And honestly, it is just mind-blowing to think about the fact that traits we culturally treat as these primordial ancient features like pale skin or blue eyes are actually geologically brand new. Before a single random mutation occurred near the Black Sea sometime roughly 6,000 to 10,000 years ago after the invention of agriculture, every single human being on the planet had brown eyes. So at the end of the day, your skin color is really just a biological dial. It's a polygenic trait controlled by dozens of genes acting purely as an adjustment mechanism for UV absorption. Dark skin isn't primitive. It is the original ancestral default configuration that kept our species alive. Light skin is simply a highly localized, remarkably recent variation that was required for low light survival. It's essentially just an evolutionary estimate of your ancestors' latitude, their diet, and their lifelong negotiation with the sun. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this one provocative thought. Human civilization has built an entire history of prejudice, oppression, and hierarchy around what fundamentally boils down to a localized vitamin D calibration issue. We created deep societal divisions over a totally simple biological necessity. So it really makes you wonder, what else about our supposed human differences might just be a forgotten answer to a question asked by a star?